This is going to be a video about the tech side of my virtual facilitation setup. And I want to say, before we get into the software and the hardware and the physical way that I set up my desk before I do any virtual facilitations, before we do that, if you are somebody who facilitates online but does not enjoy learning tech, I'm going to give you a completely different set of recommendations in the next 90 seconds, instead of all of the things that this rest of the video is going to be about. Okay, 2 recommendations. 1, the first recommendation I have is to really understand the technology that you're using, and that technology, I just mean the platform, Zoom, Google Meet, whichever one of those types of things you're using. Understand its capacities, and then really get good at being specific about the types of instructions that you're giving people within that technology. So let's just take the chat, for example, okay? If I just have people like respond in the chat, that's one way to use it. If I said, okay, here's the beginning of a sentence, and then I want you to fill in the rest of the sentence, that would be another way to use the chat. If I said, here's a question, I want everybody to type their answers, and then we're gonna hit send all at once, and then we're gonna read through each other's responses before we actually get into the conversation. I want you to send 3 words about when you think about this project, what are the 3 words that come to mind, and then I'm gonna have everyone go around and expand on one of the words that they detailed until we've kind of heard all of the different emotions that we have about going into this. Those are entirely different ways to use the same piece of technology. And so getting good at using the same type of technology, but in specific and creative ways, that will unlock so much potential. You don't necessarily need to go and look for like lots of different hardware and software to bring more life to your facilitations. The other thing I want to say is that sometimes one of the things that you can do is actually bring more things into your physical space, into the using the physical space around you, and just getting a good camera or upgrading your webcam so that it's a little more crisp of a picture will allow you to do things like actually put a flip chart next to you and for people to read it so that you could write things live during your workshop or your meeting and people would be able to see that. Like, I'm going to show you really briefly the kind of like overview of this video that I'm working on, but I'm recording this on a camera that is not a webcam. And like, this is just so much more clear than a webcam's, most webcams kind of cameras are, to be able to look at the handwriting, right? So you can also upgrade your physical setup without having to upgrade all of your virtual setup. Okay, so those would be my 2 recommendations. If you're not somebody who enjoys exploring tech, don't try to become that person. Instead, try to figure out how to use just the software that you're using to become more creative by putting more specific structures within the invitations and ways that people are participating, and consider upgrading the hardware that you're using to bring your face into your space so that you can actually do more in your physical space with like a flip chart, and consider those as your kind of initial tech setups. Okay, that was probably longer than 90 seconds, but let's move now into the world of tech. So if people want to know kind of the behind the scenes, that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start by showing you kind of the behind the scenes of my setup on my computer. And then I'm going to talk you through, let's see, what am I going to talk you through? I'm just looking at my notes that I showed you a moment ago. I'm going to talk you through a little bit of like why I think each piece is valuable, and a little bit of the learning curve, I think, of the different pieces of technology. Okay, here we go. So first things first, I'm going to be holding the camera. So apologies if it gets a little wobbly, but just to show you what my physical desk looks like. Okay, so I have 2 monitors. And I think that's really helpful and important for the type of tech setup that I do. I have this little mini key light here. I can put a link if you want. If you don't need to get the fancy one. Don't bother getting the fancy one. This is the fancy one. Don't bother. Just get whatever light you want. But this is like basically what it looks like. I usually have my mic farther out of the way. I'm actually going to use. I'm trying to both record the video, but also record on this mic for the audio of this. So I'm going to keep it a little closer to me, but know that like most of the time when I'm facilitating, I have my mic a little bit farther away and kind of out of the way, so I never have to adjust it. So I got my mic, I've got my stream deck. I'll tell you what that is. I've got like my notes in front of me. Yes, they're for the video right now, but for the workshop, they're always just for the workshop. I've got a couple of like backup facilitator cards. We'll get into that. And what else do I have? On this monitor is my Canva slides. So these are the slides that I use that people don't interact with. They're not my live, they're not the slides that I use during the workshop itself to interact with. It's not the live polling software is what I mean. And then I have the live polling software. I just wanted to pull up the slides that I actually used during the workshop. Okay, here we go. So we've got the Canva slides, which are like static for most of the part, and they're not the live polling software. And then we've got the live polling software. So that's what's on this. That's what's on this monitor. And I just like flip back and forth between them so that I can like interact and kind of like move the slides forward, right? So if I'm on Canva, I can actually like use my keyboard to like advance the slides. But that's really the only thing I'm doing on this monitor. Otherwise, I'm spending most of the time on this monitor. This is where I'll have my Zoom up. And then just to the side of the Zoom, this is literally how it was set up for my workshop. I had my notes. With just like the first few words of every section visible. That's all I had. Because I knew the workshop well enough. I had practiced it. So I could just kind of glance at them and go, right, that's the next section. So that's all that my notes were there for. So that was the like actual setup of like how my computer looked, right? And I have a sit-stand desk. So the first half of the workshop, I was standing, and the second half of the workshop, I was sitting. I find for me as somebody who's kind of a high energy facilitator that standing up allows me to be more in that high energy and allows me to feel a little bit more present. So I often start my workshops by standing up. Okay, so that's kind of like an overview of everything. And now I want to get a little bit more into the specifics. So I use a piece of software called OBS, Open Broadcaster Software. And what OBS does is that it allows me to bring things into my Zoom video that otherwise wouldn't be there. Okay, so we're gonna hop over to the Zoom and actually it might be interesting to show you it from this perspective. We'll try it. Okay, so no, that's going to be confusing because you're kind of like seeing the back side of my head and the camera. So let's not do that. Okay, so we're going to hop over to the Zoom meeting, and we'll see it from that perspective.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so you might have heard the recording in progress part as I hit the button because I do want to actually record this. Okay, is this working? Oh, I gotta set it. Okay, so I am in Zoom right now, and right now Zoom thinks that my webcam is my webcam, right? It's just like that's what's selected in my camera. As soon as I want to change that over to OBS, what I need to do is just go into my video and I just change it to the OBS virtual camera. And when I do that, you're gonna see my little logo appears in the corner here. And now Zoom is basically pulling what I've built in OBS to actually show people in the Zoom, right? So you're watching this and I'm taking up the full screen, but like what you're seeing is what people would see from me and do see from me in my workshops in the Zoom, in my Zoom kind of like window, right? So instead of screen sharing, I do stuff like this. I actually put my slides in my video themselves, in the video itself, so that I'll just spotlight myself and then I don't have to screen share in order to like move through the presentation. Okay, the way that I'm doing this is that in this software called OBS, I have put three things. I've put my video, I've put the logo, I'm gonna get better at pointing, I've put the logo, and then I've put a section of a window on my computer. So I have a window of Chrome open, and that is open to Canva. And Canva, like a slice of that window is coming through and is right here. And what's cool about that is that I can now edit this live. Edit it live. And so it's kind of like a digital flip chart, which I really love. And that is all happening, like I'm editing these in Canva, and then OBS is seeing me do that, and it's bringing it into the Zoom. So there are like a couple of things going on there. There's OBS that I'm using, which is to like kind of make this video, to make the Zoom magic is what I call it happen. And then there's a piece of hardware called a Stream Deck. And a Stream Deck is basically a bunch of, a way to program keyboard shortcuts and other kind of like pieces of other things that your computer can do onto a button. So this is what it looks like. Let's see if I can focus it in here. So this is what the hardware of Stream Deck looks like. And it's just a series of buttons. And I've programmed them to do a bunch of different things. So for the workshop itself, I use this in two ways. I use it to control my OBS, okay? So when I want to switch between kind of looks in OBS or the scenes in OBS, I use the Stream Deck to do that. So what that looks like is when I'm gonna hit this button, it brings my slides up. And then when I want them to go away, I can just hit that button again. And so I'm not looking at the software OBS at any point during the workshop. I'm only interacting with it via the Stream Deck. And this is just like a shortcut to basically say, I want that source in OBS to be visible, and now I want it to be invisible. And I have different setups. I also have like a setup where this is me split screen with my slides. This one is for the AHA slides, and I can even make my little video in the corner disappear. And I find that really useful. So that's one way I use Stream Deck, is to interact with the software OBS and to control what people are seeing. The other way that I use this is that I'll use it to send messages into the chat that I have pre-programmed onto this piece of hardware. So basically, if I hit this button, it's going to share a series of like text into the chat. I just type out what I wanted to send ahead of time, and then I just program that button to send the text and to type the text and then hit enter at the end of it. And that is what I do with all of my links and all of the chat instructions in during the workshop. So a lot of people have somebody else doing that in the background. They have like a second facilitator, like sending things into the chat, sending links and instructions. And personally, I didn't have a co-facilitator for a long time. And so I often thought of like Stream Deck as my like virtual co-facilitator. And I like having control over all that stuff. I like knowing and not having to be like, oh, can we do this? Like, to me, it makes me feel more smooth and fluid to have the ability to control that myself. And it also feels like a bit of redundancy, right? So like I can ask my person to do that, but if they don't do it as soon as I want them to, like I can just send it. And it's so much quicker than having to like copy and paste things into the chat. So that's why I use Stream Deck during the workshop. And even if you never wanted to touch OBS, you could still just use that particular piece of technology in Stream Deck, is just to like type out all the instructions that you're going to do ahead of time on like individual buttons. So like if it was activity 1 instructions, you could have a button that just says activity 1, right? And it would have all the text that you want to send in the chat for that. And that would be a brilliant use of Stream Deck. And Stream Deck is an interesting thing in that it is both hardware and software. So what I mean by that is like they sell you this like physical thing that's like, I think a really nice, like it's a nice piece of hardware, but it's also $100+. And the other really cool thing about Stream Deck is that you can just try out the software side of it if you have a smartphone. So you can download their app, you can get 6 buttons for free, and you can just try out to see if you like it. So that's what I would recommend you do. If you've never used something like this before, download the Stream Deck app, put some pieces of text that you want to send into the chat at some point in your next workshop or meeting, and add a timer. That's also where I keep my like 5-minute timers, is like there's a function on Stream Deck. Let's see if I can show it to you here. Let's see if it'll focus. Yeah, there it goes. So like I hit this like 5-minute timer button, and then it just starts a 5-minute timer. And those are the 2 things I would say try out on your 6 button Stream Deck. And you can just see if you like it and see if it works for you. If it helps, awesome, you'll get more fluid with it. I have an entire walkthrough of that, and I'll link that below. So just try it out and see what you think before you buy the hardware. I did the full version of the mobile app for like over a month before I wanted to actually buy the hardware. So it's very little investment, and you can just kind of experiment with it. So I want to see if I've covered all the things I wanted to in my notes. Stream Deck, hardware, software, ease and presence, setup. This type of stuff takes time, takes time to set it up. I think every time I do a new workshop, I probably have to spend, I don't know, somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour to just make sure that like everything is set up in OBS correctly. Everything is set, yeah, definitely closer to an hour. Everything is set up in my Stream Deck, but that allows me to be present and available and not worrying as much about the tech side during my workshops, which I think is invaluable time. So it probably takes me that, and it probably took me, I don't know, a good few hours to get like comfortable with how to build the things that I needed to build in OBS and in Stream Deck in order to feel like it was taking some of the load, it was easing my cognitive load in a workshop. Now, I think that was all worth it for me. And if it's worth it to you, then I've got a couple of more videos to help you out with that. And if there are things that you want to know or learn that you don't see in those other videos, you can leave comments there, or you can leave comments here, and we can try to do our best to like help you support in that. What I think this tech allows me to do, this might be the most important thing, is keep people's like presence and attention on what we're doing instead of on the like clunkiness of the tech. So what I mean by that is like every time I screen share, I find that people kind of get disoriented, and it also cues them to zone out. Like they're like, oh, we're screen sharing, I'm not going to be called on, therefore I don't need to pay attention. And I go around that by never screen sharing, right? When I have all of this loaded up in OBS, I don't need to screen share. I can just share the stuff that I want people to see in my video itself. And so I lose that moment of disorientation, and I also keep their attention because their brains have not been trained in the same way to ignore what's happening in my video the way that we are trained to ignore what is happening in a screen share. Like, much as I think it's a bummer that that's true, I think we have to work with the truth that people are not paying attention in the same way when we screen share. The second thing it allows me to do is it keeps me on track when I have my slides available for me to reference very quickly without me having to screen share. Then I can also keep myself focused, and that really, really helps. And that's also what Stream Deck allows me to do. Stream Deck allows me to like think ahead of time and do the prep work of all the different types of instructions I need to send in and all the links that I need, and then load them in and then just press a button, right? All I need to do is go, okay, we're doing the scenario, here's the scenario link. Oh, oh, we're doing the evaluation, here's the evaluation link, because I've already done the copying and pasting and prompting ahead of time. So that is a little bit of overview of my tech setup, why I use it, and a little bit of like how I got invested in it, or how much time it took me to invest in it. If you have more and additional questions, please let me know. Know that this might have looked real fancy. If it looks really fancy to you, I just want to let you know you can do all the things that I think you need to do for probably less than all the things I not that I think you need to do, but that you might be like, oh, I need a second monitor. I need a better webcam. I need a better, fancy microphone. I need Stream Deck. And I want to let you know, you can do a lot of this for cheap without really sacrificing any of the functionality. So getting a second monitor, go to a Goodwill or go to a used electronics store. You can get a monitor for like under $50, and any monitor will be a good monitor. Basically, if it's flat, like it's got more resolution than you need to do any of the things we're talking about. You don't need a better webcam to do any of this. I said at the beginning, if you want to do more stuff in your video, then maybe, but like in physical presence. But if you're doing a lot of this tech online stuff, you don't. Oh, that was the timer going off. And in terms of like a better microphone, you don't have to get a better microphone. Most webcams and most computers have a really good have like a decent microphone built in. But you can get a good like used blue snowball mic for like under $50. And I would say do that because it's going to be cheap and easy and effective. The best camera you own is the one on your phone. And there are pieces of technology that you can use to actually use your phone as the webcam. So if you're really interested in like having that more high definition picture, you can use your camera on your phone to get that. And Stream Deck, download Stream Deck Mobile. Like, don't bother getting the hardware until you know you like the software. And OBS is free. Okay, that's going to do it for right now. If you have more questions about tech and virtual facilitation, please leave them below, and we'll get back to you when we can with more information. Okay, bye everyone.